Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bigfoot Report. Guys, we wanted to jump on here and share a few more encounters with you. We're going to be starting off with Bigfoot at the Beaver Pond. I'm going to follow that up with a white Sasquatch at the cemetery. And then Tiffany's going to tell you all about the squirrel hunter. Guys, we're having so much fun doing these. Appreciate you guys sending them in. We have gotten several, but obviously we need more. So if you don't mind, please keep those coming. Please send those to the Bigfoot Report Podcast at gmail.com. We will be happy to narrate those for you. Don't worry about the length. If they're short, we will just add them to others to make out a longer episode. Don't worry about how long they are. The most important thing is sharing what you have experienced. Please send those in. We would love to share them with everyone. All right, guys, I know that you are ready. We are definitely ready. Sit back, relax. Let's get started.
This took place in the summer of 1986. Myself and 4 other friends decided to go on an overnight camping trip about 2 miles from my friend's house. There were 3 men and 2 women altogether. The ages ranged from 15 to 17. The area we chose to camp in is known as the Beaver Pond. At least to us and our friends it was. We were driven by my friend's father to within half a mile of where we planned to camp. We hiked in the rest of the way with our tent and supplies. The area we were camping in was on a ridge that ran along an old small lake. Our campsite was on the top of the ridge on an old road that was used as a snowmobile trail in the winter. To one side of our campsite was a steep hill that went right down to the water's edge. On the opposite side, the ridge sloped down into a swampy area, very thick with brush. On either end of the camp, the ridge continued for a short distance, 20 yards or so, before sloping down into the lower, thicker woods. We arrived at our site after dinner time, probably around 6 or 6:30, I'd say. We had a large yellow one-room tent that we set up on the top of the ridge looking over the lake. We set about gathering firewood and getting ready to make some hamburgers. The evening proceeded uneventfully for several hours. Being teenagers, we didn't plan on getting much, if any, sleep. I should point out that we were a pretty straight-laced group, so there were no drugs or alcohol being used that night. As I remember, we built our fire and made something to eat and sat around the fire drinking sodas. We never really ventured far into the woods around our site. Perhaps a few yards to gather wood and down to the water's edge. As best as I can recall, it was about 1 or 1:30 in the morning when something first happened. Another thing I should mention here is that as children, having grown up in the woods and around outdoor activities, we were all very comfortable outdoors and very familiar with the creatures that inhabit the Upper Peninsula. The first thing that happened was a distant noise. It sounded much like a screeching sound a chimp might make. It sounded quite distant, probably over a mile, as it was barely audible. It came from the direction of the swamp. The swampy area at the base of the ridge was not actually all that large, maybe a quarter mile. So we realized that the noise must have been coming from the pine forest on the other side of that swamp. I know even though the first sound was very faint and short, it gave us all a strange feeling. We tried not to think much about it and returned to whatever conversation we were having. A few moments later, we heard the noise again, much clearer and closer this time. I would estimate that it was probably 400 to 500 yards away. Still a good distance, but significantly closer than before. It was again one lone 2 or 3 second screech. After hearing this one, we were unable to go back to our old conversation, and we began to discuss the noise and its possible sources. We all agreed that none of us had ever heard anything exactly like that before. One of us ventured that it sounded like an animal in heat. The other said that sometimes an animal being killed can make a terrible sound. No one was satisfied with either explanation. We sat fairly quietly, waiting to see if we would hear more. After a few moments, the screeching began in earnest. Whatever was making the sound had come to within 40 to 50 yards of our sight and was at the base of the ridge down on the swampy side. It almost seemed as if this thing had made a direct line for our camp from the first movement we had heard it. The next 3 hours were truly terrifying. The thing began to move around our camp, always staying at the base of the ridge. It circled all the way around us, going from the water's edge on one side to the water's edge on the other. The sounds varied coming from the woods. Sometimes we could hear the sound of branches breaking as though something large were moving in the trees, and other times we could hear nothing moving. Sometimes it would move around us, screeching as it did so. Other times it would make its noise in one place and then make it again on the opposite side of the camp a minute later without our having heard one bit of movement from the woods. We tried shining our flashlights out into the woods but could see nothing. I can't remember if it had a reaction to our lights, but I don't believe so. Over the next 3 hours, this continued. Sometimes this thing would go silent for perhaps 5 minutes or so, only to erupt again with a fresh tirade. We had no idea what to do or what to think. I can honestly say that all of us were more frightened than we had ever been before. We had no weapons, save a pair of the Rambo-style hunting knives that were popular among teenage boys in the 80s, and a couple of pocket knives. We kept the fire going strong. I remember a couple of times when we all went inside the tent just to feel a little safer, but we would quickly come back out when the thing would quit for a few moments. I'm not sure if we thought it was going to sneak up on us or what. I do remember feeling very insecure when it would get silent. At least when it was making noise, we knew where it was. This is how things went until around 4 a.m. At around that time, the screeching ceased, and the thing left exactly the same way it had came. We heard a screech after a few minutes that seemed to be several hundred yards away, and then one more in the distance, and then it was gone. Suffice to say, we did not sleep. At first light, we took off at a jog down the dirt road towards the main road. I wish that we had taken more time to look for signs, but we were all just scared. I do remember that we did take note of the fact that we saw no tracks on the sandy dirt road, despite the fact that the thing must have crossed it 2 or 3 dozen times that night. Again, I have to say that we didn't look very thoroughly, though. We just wanted to leave. We walked to my friend's house about 1.5 miles to 2 miles away. We told his father all about what had happened, and we were promptly dismissed as having overactive imaginations. This is what would happen with every adult we shared our story with. We did go back later that day to get our gear. My friend's father gave him the truck so we could drive right into our campsite. We threw our things in the back and got out of there as quickly as possible. It has been several years since this has happened. I've told many people about it, but never anyone who was in a position to truly evaluate or have an interest. I have heard some of the Bigfoot sound recordings and have to say that some of them are very similar to what we heard that night. I've had many explanations proposed to me about what happened, but none has ever truly satisfied me.
Hey, Tiffany. Hey, Wayne. Hope you two are doing well. I love the show and the chemistry you guys share. You have quickly become my new favorite podcast. I live in Alabama, so not too far from you, Wayne. One day I want to visit Big Frog Mountain. The way you guys talk about it sounds amazing. I don't have the most exciting encounter ever, but I did want to share it with you too. It was October of 2020, I would say. COVID was going wide open, and the world was clearly coming to an end, right? Maybe not. I had one of those important jobs or necessary jobs, whatever they called them, the ones that allowed you to break quarantine so the world could keep spinning even after the impending apocalypse. I worked the graveyard shift then. Still do, actually. I'm actually one of those crazy ones that prefer to work nights. I'm not married, don't have any kids, so I have no problem letting those with the family work the day shift. I've always been a night owl anyway. Call me crazy, but one of my favorite pastimes is visiting old cemeteries. I just find them fascinating and very peaceful. I actually enjoy them at night. So quiet, so relaxing and peaceful. Being that I work nights, on my off nights, I would be wide awake at night while most were sleeping. This worked out perfectly. My sister called me one day to tell me about one that she had found. She's a weirdo too, I guess. She also likes old graveyards. She told me where it was, but had a warning for me. She told me she believed there were homeless people living there nearby, or at least one homeless person. She doesn't work nights, so it was the afternoon when she went by there. She says she wasn't there 10 minutes before this person started to scream at her from inside the woods that surrounded this place. It freaked her out something awful. She left. This doesn't deter me, though. I've dealt with people that were down on their luck before. Plus, I never go out unarmed. The trusty 44 Super Red Hawk on my hip, where it belongs. That being said, the next Saturday night, I paid the place a visit. From the moment I got there, I could tell something wasn't quite right. The place just felt off to me. Granted, this was my first time there, but it just didn't feel right at all. Way too quiet, way too black. This wasn't any kind of dark I had ever experienced before. This was black. You couldn't see your hand inches in front of your face. It's a damn good thing I always carry extra flashlights. I push my way through the awkwardness and fear that I'm feeling. I shouldn't even call it fear, really. More just an uncomfortableness. Definitely not what I usually feel while doing this stuff. Anyway, as I said, I push my way through it, and eventually that feeling goes away. And I'm actually enjoying myself. I'm actually having fun. I was there about a half an hour, I'd say, when the first of the strange things that night happened. Sounded like someone took a Louisville Slugger to an old oak tree 2 good times. It was pretty close, too. I'll be honest, I was completely at a loss. That really shook me. Of all the things I had pictured happening to me while doing this, that sound from about 50 yards away is not one of them. I was able to shake it off, though. It's not like it was gunshots or anything. I just figured there was a neighborhood nearby or something. To be honest, people scare me way more than supernatural anyway. Despite all the unease, I was beginning to actually enjoy myself. I got to see a few grave markers from the early 1800s and a few from the late 1700s. What has always gotten me was seeing the children that lost their lives. Knowing that in today's world, most of them would have had a chance. I've always had a soft spot for kids. Anyway, I found myself lost in the moment when the first rock hit me in the right arm, just above the elbow. I know it was a rock because I saw it hit the ground. It was smaller than a golf ball, but holy shit did it hurt. I don't know what hit me first, the pain or the fact that something with hands just threw a damn rock at me. I was genuinely afraid at that moment. Started to think about the homeless people my sister told me about. Before I could decide what to do, the second rock hit me square in the chest. What the F is going on? I screamed out, "What the hell, dude? Stop it. I'm not bothering anybody. If you want me to leave, just tell me, I'll go." No one responded, and no more rocks came. My headlamp was already on, and I grabbed my flashlight. I started to shine it around, looking for God knows what or who. It was so quiet. I hadn't noticed it before, but there were absolutely no sounds coming from the woods. That probably freaked me out more than anything. Well, maybe not getting hit by rocks. I had absolutely no idea what to think at this point. I was a good 100 yards or so from my car, so that was a bit unsettling to say the least. Nonetheless, that's where I started out. I have a pretty good buddy at work named Richard. We call him Dick for short, to get under his skin. He's a real good dude, though. He's into all the Bigfoot stuff. He's actually been on a few BFRO expeditions and hopes to become an investigator one day. I gave him a call right away as I was walking. He answered fairly quickly, which actually surprised me. I told him about everything, and he's the one that said that I probably wasn't alone and I needed to get the hell out of there. Needless to say, I was shocked and more than a little scared, to be honest. I started booking it back to the car. Headlight and flashlight still burning, and that's when I saw it. A flash of solid white zoom across the pass directly in front of me. This thing was nothing but a huge blob of white that scampered from one end of my eyesight to the other. Other than this strange and unexpected vision, I didn't really feel fear. It was all of a sudden gone. It was the strangest thing. I felt like it was just curious and wanted to see who or what was out there. I finally made it to my car and got in without incident. What I did next, I still don't fully understand. I just sat there. I had every opportunity to leave, but I just sat there with the engine running at least. I hadn't gone completely stupid, I guess. I can't explain it. I was overcome with this curiosity all of a sudden. And with the slight sense of security my SUV offered, I decided to stay a little bit longer. I guess about 10 minutes go by, and I'm just sitting there with my brights on and my flashlight in hand scanning the woodline. I scan my left side, then my right, then back to the left, and so forth. I do that a few times when I realize I haven't even looked out the front in a couple minutes. When I finally do, I almost pooped myself. Standing out in the open, making no attempt to conceal itself at all, is this massive grayish white, hair covered beast. It literally took my breath away. No more than 3 seconds go by before a pebble hit the passenger door. Immediately after that, another hits the trunk on the driver's side. This snaps me out of it, and I floored it to get out of there. Needless to say, this has completely changed my way of thinking. I mean, I was walking around this place I had never been before, and not one, not two, but at least 3 of these things were surrounding me. I had absolutely no idea either. I feel with all my heart that they let me leave that night. They could have gotten me at any point. I feel like the original rock throws was my warning to leave, and when I didn't, they gave me one more chance, with no way of mistaking them. Of course, I don't know, and I'm probably giving them too much credit, but what if I'm not? This has driven me to find answers. I know people tend to go one way or the other with these things. Either they never go in the woods again and they sell all their hunting stuff, or they go all out, balls to the wall looking for them. I've chosen the latter. I need answers. My good buddy Richard, aka Dick, has become an even better friend, and we are out in the woods every chance we get. I have found that I love this community and can't agree with you more, Wayne and Brian. This big hairy creature has brought so many people together, and I think that's beautiful. You guys keep up the amazing work and keep the content coming.
It was late September 1980, mid-morning on a Saturday with sunny, calm, and cool weather. Perfect for squirrel hunting, so off I went. not telling anyone where I was going. I headed for a small woodlot, maybe 10 acres in size, less than a mile from my house. This woodlot is about a third of a mile from the nearest road, surrounded by farmland with a small stream on the south side and with several fence rows attached. It had a farmer's lane that went through in a rough L shape, with a grass and dirt base and large enough to drive on. Such woodlots are a fairly common feature of the southeastern Michigan farming landscape. If anything, the woodlot was smaller than most. The lane enters the woodlot from the north, about half a mile from the road I first walked onto the lane from. As I entered the woodlot, I noticed something quite odd. There were a large number of birds making a big racket in the underbrush in the woods just to the right of the lane. I noticed redwings, robins, jays, and cardinals in particular, and they were flirting about the underbrush in a somewhat frenzied fashion. Many times I had seen redwings gather in large, noisy flocks this time of year, pre-migration or cornfield raids, but then gather high up. This was different and struck me as strange. I continued my way. After 50 yards or so into the woodlot, I approached a small bend in the lane where it veers perhaps 20 degrees or so to my right. My rifle was still slung over my shoulder with a sling, since the hunting spot was on the other side of the woodlot near the lane exit on the west side. At the bend in the lane, I was still glancing back at the bird commotion, and when I turned my head forward again, I froze in shock and terror. Standing about 25 yards away was a huge, furry creature, towering 7 feet into the air and standing just like a man. It was staring seemingly straight through me, and our eyes locked. It stood in the underbrush just off the left side of the trail. I could not see it below the waist, but could see everything else. It could see me from head to toe. We just stared at one another. It was massive, 3 feet wide at the shoulders, incredibly stocky and strong-looking. Reddish-brown hair was everywhere, shorter on the face, but perhaps 3 to 5 inches long on the head and shoulders. The hair was quite unkempt and mop-like, especially on the top of the head. The head was large, seemingly flat on top. I could not make out any ears. Eyes were a simple black, no whites, and a lying flat nose without any discernible features. There was even some hair there in the middle of its face. The mouth was large with a bit more hair there, giving the appearance sort of like a mustache. It did not have much expression, pretty much straight-lipped. It really seemed almost relaxed. Its arms hung at its side, with the hands in the underbrush. There were no signs of aggression. Perhaps that is what kept me from panicking, and neither it nor I moved a muscle. That eerie stare seemed to last forever. My mind raced, desperate to escape. I felt that turning and running might encourage it to chase me, and I knew that I would never be able to outpace it. I did not attempt to unsling my rifle, fearing that it might consider such a move aggressive. Also, it was only a single-shot .22, obviously a little use for something this size. The rifle was chambered but uncocked, and if the creature charged, I would probably not even have the time to cock it. I did not want to shoot this creature, but I would have in self-defense. So barely moving my hand that was at my side, I could reach back to the bolt knob and try to cock the gun while it was still slung on my shoulder. I could move the spring a little, trying several times, but from there, I could just not get enough leverage to pull it all the way back. I will never forget how hopeless I felt at that moment. I had no idea what to do next, and I just stood there. Then the creature made its move. Its large, hairy right hand came up, and swiped at a red-berried shrub right in front of it. It moved the hand to its mouth and casually chewed. It repeated these motions, glancing down to the shrub, swiping up berries and eating, then glancing back up to me. The arm motion was very fluid and unhuman-like. No jerking motions, very deft, flowing movement. The left hand remained at the creature's side. It was not picking berries like a person would. It was raking them up. Also, during the entire encounter, I never heard any vocalizations or smelled any odors. Watching it eat, I started to feel better. I was no longer this creature's only concern, so I took this as an invite to leave. I slowly began to walk backwards, and the creature continued to eat and keep an eye on me. I slipped around the bend and lost sight of the creature after a few feet. I turned around and quickened my pace into a fast walk, not wanting to alert the creature that I was running or in a panic. I continued to look back to the bend in the lane, fearing it would follow. Soon I was at the woodlot's edge and broke into a full run. Finally, only to run faster, did I unsling my rifle. I was 15 years old, and it probably did not take me 2 weeks afterwards to clam up about this for obvious reasons. In the mid-1990s, I told my future wife, and now I am reporting it here. Just feels like it's time.